So what did you think we should modify with the default scatter plot that Excel produces? Remember, on the right here is the default. This is the first thing that Excel produces. And on the left is my slightly modified version that I showed you earlier. And we've already worked with these different text and label features. And so hopefully you were able to figure those out relatively easily. What I did is I simply clicked on this title and chose to delete that. And then, as we've done before, I went to our Chart Elements menu on the right, I added in axis titles, and then I just clicked on those text boxes and edited the text, changed the font, and added in bolding. I did that also for the axis labels. You've seen this before, and hopefully you were able to figure that out. But I'm going to delete this new version, the default version. We'll focus on this one that I've already modified here. And we're actually going to do a few other things that might be useful when we're thinking about how to modify scatter plots and make them visually appealing and work better for us. You're going to learn some new tricks here. And all of this is still within our Chart Elements menu, where we're going to play around with a few of the additional features. One thing that I do not like about the scatter plot is that the data aren't centered. It seems that Excel really has a desire to start each of our axes at 0, but there's really no reason to do that. We don't learn anything with all of this white space in the lower left-hand corner, and so we can adjust those axes, and we'll do that through the Chart Elements menu. We'll go to our Axes box, we'll click on our right-hand arrow, and we'll go to More Options. Way over here on the right now, we see a lot more options for how we can modify these axes. You'll notice that the axis options have bounds associated with them, a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 80 for our daily low temperature. Let's go ahead and change this to something more reasonable. Maybe we'll change that to 20 and watch as our plot readjusts in real time to show what that looks like, so we can keep tweaking this based on how we think it would look good. I think that happens to look good. Now we see all of our data points are shifted up, so we need to modify our vertical axis as well. You'll notice a little pull-down arrow on this axis options box, and we have horizontal axis highlighted. What we want to do now is we want to change our vertical axis, so we'll select that, and we'll make a very similar change here. Let's again go with about 20, and we'll see how that looks. I think that looks a lot better. Our data fills up more of the chart now. We have less white space, and I think it's more visually appealing, and it lets us see those data better. And so that's one modification that's very useful that we can make for scatter plots like this. What else can we do with our scatter plot? Well, of course, if we wanted to, we could change our color. We could simply select our data points, right-click, and change the color however we wanted to. We've played around with that before with our bar charts. We could do the same with our scatter plot. Another neat thing we can do in scatter plots is we can add in a trend line. This is basically a statistical best fit line that shows how well our data points match up with that relationship. And so we can see that our high and low temperatures are very closely related to each other. They almost form a perfectly straight line. Sometimes that's a helpful thing to do in scatter plots like this. We'll take that off for now, though, so we can play around with something else. Even though we don't need to have categorical data with a scatter plot like this, maybe we think that people might be interested in which months are associated with which data points. We can add that in very easily, again using this data labels feature. We'll go ahead and select this, but right away we're not going to like what we have. We don't want these temperatures above our data points. What we want is we want to have the months associated with those data points. How can we do that? The first thing we'll do using this data labels menu is we'll again click on that right arrow and we'll go to more options. This will give us more options in the right, and what we're going to do is we're going to select our label options in this label options icon on the right. What we have chosen now is that the Y value is being displayed above each data point. We're going to remove that, and we'll see those numbers disappear in real time. And instead, what we're going to do is we're going to add values from cells. And so we're going to check that box right there. Once we check the values from cells box, Excel is now asking us for a data label range. Basically, what it wants to know is what data we're going to use to label these data points. What do we want the labels to say? We want them to say months. And so what we're going to do is, using this data label range selection box, we're going to select that list of months from column B. Once we've done that, we're ready to go. We can go ahead and add these data labels in and see how they look. Well, I suppose this is okay, but it's not quite the way we would want it to look. We have overlapping labels here, and it's actually really difficult to see which month goes with which data point. That's okay though. What we can do is we can make some changes to how these data labels are presented, and then you'll see we can drag them around to make it more visually appealing. We're going to do this again. We're going to go back into data labels, into our options, and what we're going to do is we're going to change the alignment of these data labels. We can put in a custom angle. You can see that the direction of the text can be horizontal as it's shown now, or we can change it to be vertical. But what we want to do is, I think in this case, we actually want to have a custom angle of about 45 degrees. That looks really nice. Most of the labels are out of the way of each other. That seems to be working well. We have a few labels that are still overlapping with each other, and watch this. This is really cool what we can do here. We don't have to always use Excel's defaults. We can simply click and drag things around if we wish. And you'll notice that Excel has this nice feature in Scatterplots with labels like this, where it's always going to draw a line between the label and the data point once you drag that label a little bit away from the data point. And so this is actually a nice way to manually modify these labels so that your chart is intuitive, it's not too crowded, and it looks good to the people who may be looking at it. So, you may not have known about some of these features, and so you may not have been able to change them yourself, but hopefully you changed the labeling, you changed the font, maybe you did think about adjusting the axes, but now you know a lot more things that you can do to make sure that your scatter plot is easily interpretable and gives people the information that you hope it does.